So welcome everybody to the SLRD Area B Agriculture Advisory Committee meeting this morning. And we are, I'm going to read the recording. Okay, thing first. Okay, excellent. So there's an electronic meetings policy, and this is a statement that we need to make at the beginning of our board or committee meeting. So this committee is being recorded. Any comments made during this meeting will form part of the public record. Public viewing of the meeting is also available in the SLRD boardroom in Pepperton. This meeting is being held virtually with some or all meeting participants attending via electronic or other communication facilities. Committee members will be involved in and participate in the meeting. B, committee members will raise their hands to advise the chair they wish to speak. The chair will record the order in which the hands are raised and will allow the committee members to speak in the order in which they are recorded. If committee members are unable to raise their hands being due to in audio mode, they will verbally advise the chair of their intention to speak. All meeting attendees should remain muted when not speaking. With respect to a vote, committee members are only required to state a nay vote, i.e. members are not required to voice yay vote to the vote. Committee members attending the meeting are required to verbally advise the chair or a staff liaison if they have to leave the meeting and when they return to the meeting. So this can be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Committee members will email the staff liaison if they have a technical difficulty with their connection and need to be reconnected to the meeting. If a technical difficulty occurs resulting in the meeting not being projected on the wall display in the SLRD boardroom, the meeting will be recessed until the projection is reestablished. If a technical difficulty occurs and it becomes apparent that a committee member has become disconnected from the meeting and the meeting's quorum is not maintained, the meeting will be recessed until the committee member returns to the meeting. Committee members who are attending electronically and declare a conflict of interest in respect of an agenda item will be placed in the virtual waiting room by a staff liaison while the committee considers the agenda item. And lastly, committee members who are present within the virtual waiting room are asked to stay at their computer or otherwise remain present and connected to their computer so as not to miss their readmittance to the virtual meeting room following consideration of the agenda item. That's quick. And this is necessary for us to read out loud every meeting beforehand. Okay, just wondered if it was something we could all say that we had read and we agree to and not have to read it out. But okay, that process is complete. And we can move on to the agenda. So like I said, welcome to everybody. I'd like to acknowledge that I am located on the traditional and unceded territory of the St'át'imc people, to which I am grateful. And I would like to collectively acknowledge the unceded and traditional territories of all the Indigenous peoples within our regional boundaries, of which there are many and of which we are very grateful. All right, I would like to do the introductory roundtable first, and then we can move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the agenda and the minutes. So Claire, I'll let you go first, and then you can name somebody, and then the next person will name the next person. How about that?
Excellent, thank you, Jackie. So my name is Claire Dewar. Really nice to meet those that are new joining the committee. I've had the opportunity of working as the staff liaison for the Area B AAC committee here for a number of years. I'd say at least 5, which has been great, and lots of really exciting work has been happening in support of agriculture in Area B, and this committee has been leading a lot of that work. And my role here today and at most meetings is really just to help facilitate the meeting and take meeting minutes and provide any sort of staff support if there's any sort of questions of that nature. But really, I'm here to support the committee in a liaison, staff liaison type role. And I will turn it over to Philippa, who can sort of introduce that other staff side that's in the call here as well.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning. My name is Philip Campbell. I'm Project and Research Coordinator here at the SLRD. We have the SLRD boardroom in Pemberton open today for the public to view this meeting if they so desire. And my role here today is to provide the audiovisual support for your meeting. I'm happy to pass this on to Alex to continue on the staff theme.
Great, thanks, Philippa. I'm Alex Mackay. I'm a planner at the SLRD. Sorry, I'm losing my voice today, apparently. I've been working closely with the Agricultural Advisory Committee for the last couple of years on the zoning bylaw update for Area B. And so I'm here today to talk to the Area B zoning bylaw first reading referral. And it's great to see some familiar faces and nice to meet all of you that are new and joining the committee this year. So I will pass it on to Melanie.
Thanks, Alex. Melanie Helmer, Director of Strategic Initiatives with the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I'm a guest here today. I don't normally attend these meetings, and this is the first time I have the privilege of joining the Area B AAC meeting. And I'm going to talk about the proposed service establishment for LAFs, which is further down in your agenda. And I will pass this along to Bev. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bev Grosler. I am new to this committee, so this is my first meeting, and happy to attend and see what we can do to support agricultural. We have a small farm in Lillooet, and slowly regenerating it into a full working farm. So quite interested in the work that we're doing here. So thanks for inviting me, and I'll pass it on to I guess Jackie.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bev. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jackie Rasmussen. I'm a local agrologist, a consultant, and I do a number of things. One of them is the executive director for the Invasive Species Society and other projects, and been a longtime supporter of agriculture in this region, and was the chair of this committee when the agriculture plan was produced a number of years back. And there's a few faces here that were on the committee with me. So I'm really pleased and really proud of the fact that this plan has not sat on that shelf and has been implemented and continues to be implemented with the support from the SLRD, but also through the Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society. And so with that, I will pass it along to, let's go with Vivian.
Thank you so much. And Jackie forgot to mention one of her most important jobs, which is to be the alternate for the Area B director. So I am the Area B director and just a very big supporter of everything agriculture in Area B and Lillooet, including this committee. Thank you. I'll pass it to Mr. Rolf de Bruin.
My name is Rolf de Bruin. I'm
Oh dear, we lost you, Ralph. Your headset clicked off some, maybe.
fix it later.
Okay, sounds good. Hopefully the last part of that would be, if you didn't already know, with the Fort Barons Winery, and been in the community for a long time. So thank you, Ralph, for being here. Let's pass it along to Stefan on the winery.
Yeah, not officially with the winery, just sort of labor there. But yeah, so I live sort of part-time at Texas Creek Ranch. I've been living here for 10 years now. And yeah, just been sort of picking up a lot of volunteer hats, trying to learn about the community and how these sorts of things work. And yeah, and the AAC was sort of the beginning of the introduction to that world of things back when Jackie was chairing the original committee. I was lucky to just attend those meetings as a guest and yeah, and see how that plan developed and yeah, and sort of share the joy of that coming to some kind of a fruition through laughs and you know, the continuation of this committee's activities. So yeah, did I say my name? Yeah, Stefan. Right on. So I have to pass it to, I'll go to Misha. How does that sound, Misha?
Hi, my name is Misha. I've been in Lillooet for four years. 5? Yeah, sure. We'll go with 4. And I've been just beekeeping in the area. That's what I do. So I'm kind of, which means I spend a lot of time like looking at all the other farms and what they're doing and how many farms or how many flowers they're growing and whatever pesticides they may or may not be using. And so that kind of, I like to look at everything because it all sort of impacts what I do. And yeah, I do that and have a small orchard, and I'm interested to see what stuff is going to happen here. I'll pass it to Emily Jones.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Emily Jones. I'm really thankful to be here as a guest today. And yeah, I'm really thankful to be joining from Northern Stratland territory. I am very new to the community, and I am the executive director with LAFS. So really excited about a lot of the ongoing work in the community and really thankful to join in today. So thank you.
I think we have Sarah next. And there's somebody on the phone. So maybe Sarah can go and then our phone person.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Hi, Sarah Pesnick. I think I know most of you who are on here. I was the executive director of LAFS for the last 3 years, and I am still currently sitting on the board as treasurer and secretary and helping Emily transition into the role.
Thanks, Sarah. And then we have somebody on the phone. Who may or may not be able to. All right, well, if the person on the phone does have a chance to unmute. Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Hello, thank you. This is Scott Taylor, and I'm on a very poor connection, but so far I've heard everybody. Thank you for welcoming me on the committee. Again, I was on several years ago for a full term, and I'm just glad to be back in the swing of things, watching things grow in Lillooet. I've been a resident of Lillooet for 16 years and a resident of SLRD in particular for about 12 of those years, of which I've seen many changes, all great and some grand and some small. Just glad to be back on the board and hear what's happening. So thank you, committee.
Thanks, Scott. Welcome back. Now, did I get everybody? I'm looking at all the boxes. Okay, Claire's nodding yes. Good. Thank you very much. All right, I would like to move to the next part of the agenda, which is making any, are there any changes to the agenda, or yeah, can we move to approve that agenda? All right, I don't hear any desires to do any changes, so that's good. Could I have a motion to approve? What you can do, just so people know, there at the bottom, there is a raise hand option on your menu. It may not be on the bottom. If you're on an iPad, it might be somewhere different. Or you can even just give me a full hand raise like that. One of the members, Scott, if you don't hear anybody and you'd like to do that, just unmute yourself and go ahead and speak. So that's kind of how this works. And I just ask for someone to do the motion verbally, and then someone to second that with a hand. And then I ask for any, is there any objections? And if there's none, then we move ahead. All right, so I would like to, yeah, would somebody like to move that we approve the agenda?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Stefan, and a seconder. Thanks, Misha. All right, any objections? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. And the next would be the review and approval of the minutes from January 18th. So we all received those. Were there any changes or comments or anything to do with those? All right, great. Everyone thought that they were good. Thank you, Claire, for that. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? We can just have a hand. That's fine with that. Oh, Misha, thank you. And seconded by Ralph, thank you. Any objections? Great, motion is approved. All right, and now we move to the business arising from the minutes. And I see there is, the first action item was for me to connect with the Stadtlium for joint food and agricultural updates. And I have made several connections with Hawklip First Nations, which was one of the key places where I know that things are happening. And I still have not received any, I think there's some confusion as to what the letter was asking. And so I still really need to connect with Pauline Michelle about, and even just to get an update. But thankfully, my other work is taking me to connect with their youth through my LRIS work. So I'll be talking to Deborah Peters, who's also doing some agriculture type education with the kids at Hawklip. She's their community youth coordinator. But I also know that that Cleaklit has their community gardens up and running. And so there's also some updates from there that we could potentially get. But how it's been received is that if any staff wants to come to our meeting to give that kind of information, we have to give a formal letter that asks for us to join, asks the permission of the chief and council for the staff member to join us. So there's a little bit of process involved. And I'm kind of thinking at this point, Claire, that it might be not a bad idea of, instead of just the one letter to Hawklip, that we do a general letter to all of the Upper Stadtlium and just say, just with a brief introduction of who we are and that what we'd like to do, make a connection to the ag plan and our just that we would like to connect and talk at this table about what's happening, and with the goal of sharing information and ways to support each other. And then the follow-up can be after that to find out when the chief and council meetings are, when that would be, and if they do have any projects and staff that would be willing to come. So I think that we should just broaden it out rather than just the one. And you and I can work on that offline. Did anybody else have any information to share that they may or may not know with some of the things that are happening with our Indigenous neighbors that we could reach out specifically for? Oh, go ahead, Bev, and then Vivian.
Hi, sorry, I just had a question. So I just sort of note that there is no First Nations representation on this committee, and I just sort of wondered, connecting with the communities is really great, but again, there might be a selective reason why there's not a First Nations specific representative on this committee. So I was just asking for a point of reference to that. And I would really support discussing and sending a letter to all the First Nations communities, because they don't collectively work together necessarily on specific projects. So if we want buy-in, then we have to include all of them, I think, in the discussion. So.
Yeah, definitely. Good points. So initially I was reaching out as a board chair to Hawklip because I knew about a specific project. And then, but going back to your first sort of point of reference, in the past, when we did, for instance, the agriculture plan, because this is a committee of the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Board, that even as we developed the agriculture plan locally, the way that it was set up, that this committee was forging ahead with this, the representation from the Indigenous, from the St'át'imc and from the District of Lillooet were attending our meetings as guests, not as board committee members. It didn't, the feedback that we got from the St'át'imc representation was that it wasn't in their comfort zone, or it wasn't appropriate for them to be a member of a committee of another government when they have their own government. So in other words, if we were to include them in these meetings as part of our the committee, it would be as guests. It could be permanent guests, but then just including them and this, information exchange was part of the agriculture plan of ensuring the collaborative and information sharing piece. So we definitely are trying our best to, include and reach out to them, but also, as you know, from really well from your health background, that just their capacity alone to participate in meetings and to even information exchange can be very limited. And so we're trying to meet them at their level by doing the first step, write the letter, and then make the first initial contact to build that relationship, and then figure out how they'd like to be included, whether they want to come to our meetings, and how we would logistically do that, which I don't think it'd be a problem as a guest all the time, or whether they just want to come once a year or as on an as needed basis when they have projects coming up. So, and the other part of that would be that the Agriculture and Food Society also too sort of has that ongoing role of building those relationships and seeking, they've done a lot of work with the St'át'imc and for hosting events and workshops and things like that. So that's the other kind of key piece. Anybody else, staff or Vivian, you were going to go next, but want to contribute to that? Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Just, this is a complicated subject, but I strongly support your suggestion of sending letters to the individual bands and possibly tribal council as well. And I was thinking Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society has 6 seats for St'át'imc reps. That's standard in their constitution and bylaws. Those are there. They haven't been utilized much, but they're there. And also, as we'll hear later, we're working on the service establishment for LAFs, for LAFs, but it may be pertinent just to put a bit of information about the fact that we're doing that in the letter as well. I just think those are 3 really important pieces of information that could probably all fit on one page. And it might be a good idea to include that in the communication bulletin. I don't know if you want a motion or to discuss it, but just to put those thoughts forward for your consideration. Thanks.
Thanks, Vivian. That's a great idea. Sarah and Emily, and Rolf is on that committee as well. Is there some benefit? Would you like us as part of that letter to include to promote those seats that are available on the LAFs committee? Or the board, sorry, board of members, yeah.
Yes, this is something that has come up in a few of our conversations, and I would really appreciate any support in communications. And as I'm still new to the community, having support in building those relationships is really appreciated.
I think it's a good frame so that it may go over to a page, just because if we're explaining the background, the actual agriculture plan, it does say St'át'imc and District of Lillooet, But to be completely honest, I think I've mentioned this before, when the plan was created, we only had Lillooet Tribal Council representation and Stotliam Government Services staff participate. And so individual communities at the time weren't participating fully. It was like sort of ad hoc with a few of them, and they've certainly changed by now, the politically and staff wise. So I think that we're going to need to frame like, hi, here, this is us, this is what the SLRD board or AAC is and our role. This is what the plan is. This is how it came to be. And this is the action from it is for us to continue to connect with the Stotliam and create opportunities for information sharing. And then this is the Agriculture and Food Society that was basically as a result of the ag plan to help implement the ag plan, and also now has gone beyond that with other missions and visions that has these board seats. So I think those are the sort of the key points that we need to get across in the letter, and then asking them for to invite them to a board or at least an AAC meeting to share any information that they might have about their projects, or just listen to what's happening on a board meeting, and just to start the relationship building. Okay, I think that's exhausted that, unless anyone has any final comments. Okay, hearing none. So I guess that's the action. It really isn't that new. I don't think I need to make a new one. Do I need to make, Claire?
I think we can just keep that up until we fully complete it. So I think we'll just keep working at it.
Okay, that sounds great. I'd like to move on to the next action, seeing as how I'm already at 10:30. So this wildlife agriculture meeting targeted for spring, Emily, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this may be moved forward to the fall, just with capacity and, being able to to put this in. But you can give us an update. I believe you were going to ask for funding, and there was a grant specifically related to this. So if you could give an update on that, and then maybe where you're at with this agriculture wildlife.
Yes, thank you. I would agree that the fall is looking like a much more feasible timeline. But yes, I have applied for the Knowledge Transfer and Events grant, which has been received. So we're able to support it, and we just need to potentially have a few more planning meetings to get that off the ground. But there's lots of really good ideas in the works. So that is where we're at.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, I'll talk to you offline. There's a few more people that I had ideas about inviting, specifically the Wild Sheep Society and some of the work that they are actually proposing to do this summer with vegetation plots in the burn area. So the wild sheep is definitely an issue and of top priority in my mind for this wildlife agriculture meeting, especially with the risk of the domestic sheep and the disease transfer that has occurred in the past. So, all right, so good. That's good. It's something that's on the wildlife agriculture meeting is actually one of the action items in the ag plan, and is something that continues to come up, whether that's wolves or even deer and the fencing that's occurred. So it's a good action item that we need to continue. All right. So the action for the AAC to start back review of the Area B zoning bylaw topics and issues at 2.4. I feel like we needed to have a big cheer that this is complete. And thanks to the staff for helping us get through that. And then the next action too, that staff to explore addressing ALR mapping errors, either through the ALUI update or directly with the ALC ministry. Claire, could you give a quick update on this one?
Sure, thanks, Jackie. So we did, and we reached out to our planning technician who works on all our GIS mapping pieces, and we've kind of run into a bit of a roadblock. There's not much we can do in that it really is with the ALR, and it's up to them to update through their processes, and we can we can do what we can through our zoning bylaw, but that mapping isn't our mapping basically, and it's just reflected in the SLRD web mapping as a layer, but it's not really for us to change those boundaries.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. It looked like when we were looking at the zoning bylaw that some of the line work, it was just a shift, like a projection issue versus an actual boundary issue. But what I'm hearing you saying is that it's an actual boundary issue. And even though for instance, in my neighborhood, the boundary goes over a road and then into somebody else's property, and that is not actually ALR on their zoning, but that has to be done through the ALC and the ALR, and that has been flagged. So, all right, those ships definitely move very, very slowly, and it's not something we can address, but at least with the zoning, as long as the zoning is correct and not causing the properties to be zoned ALR when they actually are not.
Yeah, I think our best tools are through the zoning, and then when we have an update to do an opportunity to do the ALUI update, that's when we can get, I think, into more of the, hopefully getting those ministry representatives there on the ground, and that will maybe provide some further information for their process.
And sorry, did I miss that? Did we have a tentative date on an ALU? Can you expand that for everybody? Agriculture Land Use Initiative, correct?
Inventory,
okay.
correct.
Inventory,
And
okay.
there's an opportunity to consider updating sort of every 5 years. That's what there's funding available to do. It is a process, and we just recently completed that for the Pemberton Valley, I guess a year, maybe 2 years ago now. And given that the ag plan and the agricultural land use inventory that was completed as part of the ag plan was completed, say, in 2014, I think, we can consider updating, and it is actually really great to check in to see sort of what's happened on that land. Sort of, you have those two pieces of information to reference, and it was a really great lot of useful information that came out of the Pemberton process. So it's something that I would suggest us encouraging or exploring sort of this year. It's something we apply for in terms of the grant and whatnot. So
I think it would be best if we get that ball rolling. I don't expect that the field, because usually it's like a mapping exercise and then some field checks. So I expect that it would actually at the soonest happen next year. And it's too bad we couldn't have applied last year so that it kind of corresponded with the bylaw being, but at the same time, that's fine. Let's get that ball rolling. Do we need a motion then for that?
I think a motion would be helpful. Yep. And then staff can take that back and see where, I know everything has been kind of on really slow with the sort of COVID stuff going on. Like they haven't been able to do any of the field work. So that's why we weren't looking at it for this year, because it felt like things were still in flux.
Okay.
From that perspective.
Okay. So yes, a motion for the staff to initiate applications for ALUI update for Area B would be, I guess, the motion put forward on the table. You can help clean that up. Can I make that motion then, or do I need someone to make that motion?
I think you can, Jackie.
Okay, can I have a seconder? Thanks, Rolf. Are there any objections to putting that motion in? No. Okay, great. Excellent.
Just to clarify, Jackie, I'll put targeting for the field, like the field work season would be in 2023. Like we'll work this grant this year, but I think it'll be realistically, like you said, 2023.
Yeah, oh yeah, that makes sense. It doesn't sound, yeah, especially we're too soon. It's too close to this field season. I doubt that that would happen. Plus you guys need time in your staff process to put that into the queue. All right, excellent. I think we're finished on the action items and we could move on to Area B zoning amendment bylaw referral update from Alex.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jackie. Claire, I might get you to open the staff report, like screen share the staff report for this piece. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the staff report and the draft bylaw that were linked in the agenda package for today. I'm not going to speak to this in a huge amount of detail to start, but I will give kind of a brief overview, especially for those of you that are new to the committee, just to understand why we're doing this update. So the existing Area B zoning bylaw needs really two sets of amendments that are directly tied to agriculture. So the first is that, as was kind of just touched on in the mapping piece, we don't currently have agricultural zoning in place in Area B. So there's parcels that are in the RR1, 2, and 3 zones, as well as R1, that have either the whole parcel is in the agricultural land reserve or a portion of the parcel is, that don't have appropriate zoning. So the first set of amendments in this bylaw is to address that issue. I will highlight this is also new to to everyone here. When we were doing the mapping for this, we had previously discussed having 3 distinct agriculture zones, 1, 2, and 3. We did also come across there's 5 parcels in the R1 zone that also have a portion of their land base in the ALR. So now we're proposing 4 distinct agriculture zones. And the reason we're proposing having 4 individual zones is that so any existing uses, for example, a minimum parcel size for new subdivision in the current zones, if they are compatible with the provincial regulations, we can maintain those existing uses in the new ag zones, so that people aren't losing permitted uses on their property. So that's the first piece, is addressing the zoning issue. The second piece is that in the last, I'll say roughly the last 5 years, there have been a number of significant changes to the Agricultural Land Commission Act, as well as the regulations at the provincial level. And we have to ensure that local government bylaws align with those provincial regulations. So there's required amendments that address that issue. And then there are also some discretionary amendments that kind of fall out of that, where the provincial regulations set the framework for local governments to make decisions. For example, agritourism accommodation, we don't have to allow that, but that's something that we discussed in great detail with the Agricultural Advisory Committee. And it was felt that that's a really important economic opportunity in Area B. So that's something that we have included in the proposed bylaw amendment. So all of the discretionary amendments that have been made or proposed to date are supported by the Agricultural Advisory Committee. We went through all of these in great detail in December and January as a group. So I think with that, I'll just open it up to comments. We can pull up the draft bylaw. All of the amendments are highlighted in there just to make it a little bit easier to go through. And I'm happy to take questions and help to provide clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Does anyone have any questions regarding the bylaw update? It was very thorough, and we feel really, we're really pleased with the what went forward to the board for consideration, and that all of our pretty much all of the stuff that we put forward for recommendation was approved to be implemented into the new bylaw. I don't see any questions. I think that if there is anything afterwards, you can always send that forward to Claire, and she'll get that to Alex. And so, all right, hearing some silence, that's probably the quickest piece that we've ever had on the bylaw. Hey, Alex, which is it's nice. It means we've all done our job, I think.
Sorry, I just
go ahead,
one,
Stefan.
Quick question. So yeah, so this was referred to us over the last few years, and I was just curious what other groups were sort of involved in constructing it, just out of curiosity.
Thank you. So through the chair, as we were working on the bylaw, there was some consultation with Interior Health, the Agricultural Land Commission and the ministry. At this stage, now that the draft bylaw has been given first reading by the board of directors, we are starting our formal referrals process. So that's this meeting with the Agricultural Advisory Committee, but it is also all applicable First Nations, provincial ministries, and organizations. So it's a lengthy list, but it will also go back to the ALC and the ministry for comment at this point in time. And if there's any changes that need to be made, then we would do that before it goes back before the board. And I will just say to the point that Jackie made, if there are any thoughts or comments that come up after this meeting today, the referrals process is open. This will go back before the board in July. So there's a little bit of time if you have comments or questions to follow up on those. Thank you.
It's really helpful. And then sorry, and then just one further question. So that at a certain point in time, there is an open house associated with implementing this. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So through the chair,
perfect.
Once we do so it'll go back to the board for second reading in July. After second reading, that's when the public hearing process takes place.
Those are great questions. Thanks for bringing those up, Stefan. And Alex, is it possible to ensure that the Agriculture and Food Society has the communications about the referral period, the ways to connect, as well as the open house that they can then pass along to the membership?
That's a great question, Jackie. Thank you. I think I'd have to go and double check the list because the referrals process is formal and it's at the direction of the board. I'd have to go back and check the list there. But I can certainly provide, there's a page on the SLRD website as well that details the bylaw amendments that are being made, and I can share that out. And certainly when it gets to the next phase of the public hearing as well, I'll make sure that LAFS is looped into that communication directly.
Okay, that sounds good. I see, Rolf, you have a question. Go ahead. Oh, accept your, I'm going to put this, there we go. Here we go. On page 2, Ralph says that agritourism activities, are these only allowed to be held on properties with farm status?
Yes, so through the chair, that is correct. And that is coming directly out of the ALR use regulation. We don't have any authority to amend that or change that.
Okay, he says, thank you. Thanks, Ralph. Some of those things were sort of, we're not as, we don't have as much flexibility. Vivian, you had a question or comment?
A comment just to say, this went before the board and it was pretty well received. There were a couple questions, and I must say to the staff that they handled the questions really well and sort of represented the thinking and the wishes of the AAC. And having been on both, I really appreciated the work that the staff did for us. And yes, progress, hooray. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that we might be finished that. But
Jackie,
yes, that's, yeah, go ahead, Claire.
It would be great to get a motion or resolution from the AAC so that this can be, so we can have like a formal response to the referrals. I'm not sure if that's something that the AAC would like to put forward now for wrapping up this item.
Oh, I see. Okay, so this is our technical referral of that first reading. Is that correct? Or
Correct,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I guess, so the motion would be to, that the AAC accepts and has no, or has full support of this version going forward, something like that. I'm so good at making motions. Someone can help me. Does anyone feel comfortable seconding, or does anyone have any discussion or objections to that, putting that motion forward before I move forward? Yeah, okay, go ahead, Bev, actually.
Hi, I just had a question then. If we approve this as a first step, does it come back to this committee at the end for final approval, or how does that sort of work, just in terms of of that
Changes?
process piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Alex or Claire? If there's changes that could affect how we perceive and what we've recommended going forward, do we get another look at those?
Thank you. So not as part of the formal process, other than participating in the public hearing process following second reading, I don't anticipate that there will be any substantial changes that fall out of the referrals process from the ministry or the ALC. But I think that's something we can examine as staff. If there is a significant change, then certainly that's something we can bring back before July for conversation.
Okay, I think that would be really prudent. I don't want to assume that there'll be no changes. And if there are any changes, I feel that it's necessary for us to have a quick peek at them before the final approval. So it sounds like we have two motions. One is that to approve this version moving forward, and that if there are any changes to this version that we'd like to have a review of them.
And would we be having another meeting before it went to final reading?
Usually, oh, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so thank you, Jackie. Just for clarity, so there's a couple of pieces here. So it's gotten first reading. After first reading, the formal process is this referrals, 30-day referrals period. Then it goes back before the board for second reading, for consideration of second reading. And if it's granted second reading, then we do the public hearing. Then it goes back before the board again for consideration of third reading. After that, in this case, it would actually need to be approved by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure before it can be adopted. But we're several months away from getting to that consideration of third reading. There will be other opportunities. As I said, if there's any changes that need to be reviewed, we can accommodate that by way of a meeting as part of the process. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. That sounds good to me. So there's two motions on the floor. As long as we don't have any more questions. Yeah, I probably have to do the first one first. The full support one for this version for the first reading moving forward. Can I have a second of that seconder? Misha, thank you. And any objections? All right, I don't see any objections. And then the second would be ensuring that there would be a review by the AAC of any changes to this bylaw before the final reading, or whatever that is that staff can tell me, and before the final. Does anyone could someone second that for me? Oh, go ahead, Alex. Do you want to?
I was just going to suggest you can say before second reading, before consideration of second reading.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that motion? Thanks, Rolf. And are there any objections? All right. Seeing no objections, I think we can finish this agenda item. Thanks, Alex. Okay, we're only a little bit behind. Next up on the agenda is proposed service establishment to provide a financial contribution to the Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society, review and provide input to the project. Melanie will be our staff person guiding us through, and Director Birch Jones will be assisting.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you all for accommodating me on your agenda here today. Very happy to be able to bring back to this committee something that had its roots in this committee back in the beginning, almost a decade ago now, from its inception. And this group ended up leading to a working group that was working with a consultant that led to the two different parts of the agricultural plan, one being the background and current state of affairs as it was captured at that time, and the second piece being a series of forward-looking recommendations as to how agriculture could be best supported in the Lillooet area. After that, the working group, one of the recommendations was that that working group should transform or be replaced by grow into society that could continue to support the recommendations and continue to support agriculture in the area as it evolves. And Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society, who's on the phone and may have something to add to that after, was born. Originally forming in 2015 and established in 2016. One of the things that came with that was an intention that there should be sustainable ongoing funding to continue to support agriculture in the area. And up until this point, Director Birch-Jones and before her Director Macri were providing discretionary grant funds to enable the society to continue to implement the various recommendations that were made in the agricultural plan. So it was envisioned by the SLRD board and part of the conversation back in the beginning that there be a service that would provide that sustainable funding so we could continue to have security in having these priorities move forward. The board passed a series of recommendations moving that along due to COVID and some other SLRD considerations. That was really put on hold for a couple of years, but we're picking those threads back up and it was brought back to this committee, the topic today. So as part of that preliminary engagement before any service establishment would move forward, this topic is also going to the District of Lillooet Council tonight, and Director Birch-Jones has reached out to Northern Statlium, and I think she could probably give you some more update on how that conversation is going. The intention would be that a service would be established. It would be through taxation. It would be a small amount for taxpayers in Lillooet and Area B. And the conversation with Lillooet is around the level of interest in participating in this service, which would then be the District of Lillooet and Area B. In addition to that, there is an invitation to the Northern Statlium communities that they be invited to be involved. The SLRD doesn't have any ability to requisition taxes over reserve lands, but because the Northern Statlium are valued participants in the original agricultural plan and continue to be actively engaged in agriculture in the area, there's an open invitation for them to engage and be involved to the level that they would like to. There is neither a presumption of them wanting to participate or not wanting to participate, but basically an open invitation. So this is brought back to the committee today for any thoughts or any input into moving this forward, and happy to take any questions in that regard. Before I do though, I would like to turn this over to Vivian to see what she would like to add. She's certainly a strong advocate for agriculture, and she and I have had quite a few conversations about this so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie Helmer, and I am so grateful and glad that you're working on this and sort of moving it along, and that we have this presentation with the, originally we were scheduled for last evening, and that would have been neat. We could have given you an update at this meeting. However, for Lillooet District Council reasons, the meeting is moved to tonight, and we're presenting. Emily is going to be there, and maybe even Sarah for content experts. That might be helpful. Emily's definitely on. I don't know. Sarah? I thought we could wear our t-shirts. And I'm hoping to have a positive reception from Lillooet Council. Obviously, I think this is what we should be doing and where we should be going. And we will have them on board, hopefully after the presentation this evening. We're right at the beginning of the meeting, and I do believe, Melanie, that they've allowed us 20 minutes. And I see Sarah saying she'll be at the first, that she'll be at the conference. That's good. That's wonderful. We'll see you all there. And we will provide a little update to this committee following. How would that be? And our work to try and reach out to the Statlium, Emily's done some good work trying to get us onto the Tribal Council agenda, and we've had some good contacts and initial conversations, but nothing really solid yet. We just have to keep on working on it. So that's where I'll stop. Emily, did you want to add something to that from our work?
I don't really have any specific details, but I am very thankful for everyone's efforts, collective efforts in getting this to this point. And yes, I have made some, I've had some response with some Stratlium contacts in the past few days. So really looking forward to developing those conversations further as well.
Thanks, everyone. I did have a question about this process, and it kind of relates back to when the Ag Plan was first accepted and basically ratified by the SLRD Board, and understanding also too, I need some my memory to be jogged on the District of Lillooet side, but I think it will be important to know going into your district meeting is that having that information from the previous council, that, and maybe Rolf remembers, was it actually accepted and by the District of Lillooet? Because I know, for instance, at the Stratlium level, there were no chief and councils that accepted this plan and ratified it basically in their communities. But I do believe the District of Lillooet did do that. So that will be key. So if they like formally signed on and said, yes, we accept this and we approve it and support it, then that will be key to whether they, one of the, support and understanding moving forward with this service bylaw. So there's that.
Jackie,
yeah.
That's a really good point. I recall, my recollection is the same as yours, but I can dig into the files after this meeting when the Ag Plan was adopted, and just confirm that the District of Lillooet did as well. And I'll provide that directly to Director Birch Jones and to Melanie after this meeting, whatever.
Okay, that would be fantastic, because the vision, so when the plan was being finished off, and then the whole idea of implementation came forward, it was a concern of the group, and particularly of mine, that this would just sit on a shelf, that there are many plans that are created and they're wonderful, but if they don't actually get implemented, then there's just, it always feels like a waste of time. So in this case, the idea that was recognized that potentially this Squamish-Lillooet Regional District staff may or may not have that time, and we didn't see the Stratlium time, and definitely District of Lillooet didn't have the capacity so for the implementation. So the model of the not-for-profit was something that we put forward as an idea, and then it took off and it was implemented. So then this idea of the service is that if the SLRD, District of Lillooet, and the Stratlium don't have the capacity to implement, then this was one of the ways, was through this not-for-profit model. But by having a service, this is the long-term funding that commits to the implementation of further implementation and support of the plan, given that the capacity isn't at that government level, but the government is providing the funds. And so to me, it's logical. It just seems a way to continue to implement and to support agriculture in a stable, long-term way. And I believe that there may be a little bit of convincing that may need to happen at the council level to understand why this is being asked for, and that the District of Lillooet is the hole within our donut that is the SLRD Area B, and to have a full coverage that includes the District of Lillooet just only makes sense. Bringing on the Stadtlium and having their support eventually, that to me is a little bit more complicated, but still we can still continue to move forward with collaborations. Sarah, you have your hand up. Are you looking for your unmute, maybe, Sarah? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, there I am. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to also point out quickly that the official community plan that the district has just proceeded with also is strongly in support.
Great. Of a service bylaw or of just agriculture in general?
Yeah, not directly of a service bylaw, but I think that with what they've put in the official community plan, that we can probably use that to convince them that a service agreement would help move those things forwards.
Nice. Thanks, Sarah. That's a good point. Now, Scott Taylor, you don't have on mute. Did you want to say something?
No, thank you. Just listening.
Okay, no problem. You might want to mute. I just hear a little bit of feedback. All right. Does anybody else have any questions or comments, things like that? Or maybe Sarah, you're on mute. There's a few of you not on mute. Okay, hold on. I'm looking at all my participants. Vivian, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also saw Bev's hand up earlier.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, Sarah, it's a very good thing you're going to be there and you could make that point this evening. That would be very helpful. Yeah, maybe not everyone understands that the funding now is based on the Area B director making a resolution based on a budget request received from Lillooet Agriculture and Food to fund through some payment in lieu of taxes money, some of the BC Hydro money, which is fine and it's working well so far, but you don't have the long-term security when you're sort of dependent on the director to move those funds along. A service area tax establishment is a much better long-term way to go for that sort of security.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing that I've been very passionate about in the past, is that if these governments got on board to support this plan and they support agriculture and they don't fund the implementation of the plan, then to me, it doesn't make sense to even have a plan at all. So if you got behind it, then let's put a little bit of money behind it and let's continue the support that we need for local producers in this form. So to me, that's what every board should consider when they're like, yeah, let's have a plan. Let's make a plan for something. That are you willing to implement it? Are you willing to go to the next step to implement it? And if you're not, then don't get the funding to do the plan. It's not responsible. All right. Melanie, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that if the rest of the committee is of the same mind as yourself with respect to supporting and wanting to see funding for this to continue through a service establishment, that it would be great to have a resolution of support from the Agriculture Advisory Committee.
Nice. Thank you for that reminder. Always have to be reminded that we need a resolution. All right. Sarah, just making sure that your hand is just up because you had it up from last time. You might want to, or did you have another comment?
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. All right, I'm happy to make that motion that the proposed service established by law to provide financial contribution to Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society is fully supported by the Agriculture Area or Agriculture Advisory Committee, SLRD Area B. Then do we have a seconder? Okay, Ralph, second. Is there any opposition to this? All right, no. Excellent. Thank you very much. That passes through. And we have caught up. We're at 11:10. Updates and next steps and close of meeting. Claire, I can turn this over to you.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Well, that was felt like a really productive meeting. It was nice to just check in on some of these big projects that have been in the works for many years, and even hopefully a nice sort of summary for some of our new members, committee members, to see where some of these projects are at. And it looks like we'll probably be reporting back on both of these items as they move through the sort of, at least the bylaw amendment process. And then as Director Birch-Jones mentioned, it'll be great to get an update on sort of where the District of Lillooet is at with regards to the service establishment bylaw. Are there any next steps once you know, in terms of timelines there? You know, we sort of check in with the District of Lillooet. Where will the service establishment work be going after tonight?
Yeah, through the chair. Thank you for the question, Claire. It really depends whether Lillooet is supportive of, continues to be supportive of participating in the service area is really make or break on whether we can proceed with the service establishment bylaw. So if the District of Lillooet is supportive, and that's at the full discretion of the current mayor and council, then the SLRD would draft a service establishment bylaw, bring it before the board for consideration of first 3 readings, and would then proceed with sending a copy of the bylaw after 3 readings out to the municipal council of the District of Lillooet formally for their consideration and get a resolution of support. There would also be engagement with Electoral Area B to find out their level of interest. And we require approval from the Inspector of Municipalities, which the timeline around that is really, it can range significantly depending on how much other work municipal affairs staff are looking at, and the Inspector of Municipalities has on the task list. But when all of those approvals and assuming that all of those things are green lights, then it would come back to the SLRD board for further consideration of adoption of the bylaw. And if that is all done in time for before December 31st of this year, it could be effective for the 2023 tax year.
Wow. That's very great. That could be. Go ahead, Bev. Do you have a question?
Sorry, I guess everybody sort of mentioned my concerns, I guess, because not having attended many District of Lillooet meetings, but agriculture does not seem to be high on their list of things that they like to talk about. So I'm a bit concerned going in that the presentation is really, you know, received in a way that they'll really understand the ramifications of not supporting this. So I guess my question is, with new council coming in November, if this council says no, is there an opportunity to represent this to the next council? So I don't know if that's something that could be sort of considered. I do know a few of the council members are not running again, and so their interest in their community right now is perhaps not as like their District of Lillooet hat is maybe a bit lopsided. And so I just wanted to ask if there was that consideration to put it before the board if they actually say no to this request.
Oh,
yeah, through
ahead.
the chair, that's a good question. The SLRD does have an ability of choosing how they would like to proceed, whether they would like to engage with all of the electorate directly in the District of Lillooet and SLRD Area B, or whether it goes to the municipal council. The step that I had mentioned was going to the municipal council because we do like to collaborate. We'd like this to be a collaborative process, and based on their previous high level of involvement with the agricultural plan and support for the agricultural plan. However, it's at the discretion of the SLRD board, being an SLRD service, as to how the approval of the electorate is obtained. And so that could be considered differently if there was a desire of the board to look at a different option on obtaining that approval.
Thanks for that
We could do
clarification.
something. Yeah, it's called an alternative approval process. And so we could do that for both Lillooet and Area B. It's like a reverse petition. So we tell everybody we'd like to proceed with this, and then we would need 10% of the electorate to submit that document, basically saying they're opposed to the establishment of the service. So that could be done for the entire service area. It's like I say, more collaborative to give it to the Lillooet Council, and it's also the alternative approval process is a bit more staff intensive and costly. So the bigger that process needs to be, the more time and money that goes into it. And being a service, we'd like as much money as possible to go directly into the hands of the society if the service is established, rather than to covering administrative costs associated. Thank you.
Go ahead,
And
Vivian. Yeah.
a very thank you to the chair, an extremely good point to make this evening. And I am a little worried about the council sort of saying, well, we'll leave this decision for the incoming mayor and council. And I will certainly squeak that I've been lobbying for the last 4 years. We had this in the works for quite a while. And we are seeing the benefit, particularly through COVID, of the agriculture sector here locally. So I will try and argue that, you know, people are elected to make these decisions, and I've certainly made mine. So there we go. Thank you, though.
I know we probably have a lot of ideas on how to convince them, but I think one of them that everyone can relate to is the fact that Airport Gardens is now no longer in operation, and that family has had to shut down. So all of us is going to be affected on our food security due to Airport Gardens. So it's important that each individual counselors understand that when they cannot go get their tomatoes and peppers and whatnot this year as a result of impacts to agriculture and labor. So I think that's one key thing that could be brought up that will hopefully really hit home for them and spur them forward with supporting this initiative. If it's not, you know, if they have to delay it, I would like them to be more like, yes, we approve and we'll pass the torch to the next council so they can continue the good work. So good luck. I'm really thankful that you guys are on this and that you're able to attend this meeting. I'm really grateful. Go ahead, Vivian.
This might just be stating the obvious, but the council meetings are available for everyone to watch and even participate in. You can do it on Zoom. If by chance you're free at 5 p.m., it would be fantastic. The more lobbying we all do, the better. So thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. That's a good point. Oh. I think we have Mandy Rogers on the line, who is one of our AAC members. And so welcome, Mandy. I don't know if you can unmute yourself and just give a brief introduction. We are just finishing up our discussion, and in the next steps, I know that so I just you might want to introduce yourself and who you are. We have a few new members. She might not be able to do that. I know that it's been hard in the past to connect in her remote location. So she might just pop up in a sec here. That to me is the final agenda item and the closing. So was there any other next steps? Claire, can you tell me next meeting or that kind of thing?
Thanks, Jackie. And if anyone else has any updates they'd like to share to the committee, this is a great time. From staff's perspective, I'll look to keep the committee updated on both of these important topics, both the ag plan, the service establishment and ag plan funding, as well as the Area B zoning project. And as the motions are laid out today, if there's any changes, we'll be bringing to the zoning bylaw, we'll be bringing those back to the committee, and we'll look to provide updates. You know, I probably hold another meeting, I'd say in early fall is when we'll target our next meeting, unless there's something more of a more urgent nature that comes up before then, and we need some input from the committee on. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. And go ahead, Stefan. Yep.
Sorry, just one question. So Vivian, or sort of a question for Vivian. So I spoke with Area I Director Stephen
Rice. Yeah.
Stephen Rice.
Yeah. And yeah, it was sort of talking about fire stuff, but we started talking about AAC stuff as well. And it sounds like they might be on their way to trying to get a plan drawn up for that area. And I'm not sure if he had brought that up with you recently or anything like that, but it seems like it's on his mind. So somewhere in between trying to rebuild all of his local infrastructure or help that process along, that is another thing that he's thinking about. And it seemed to make sense just with the boundary being where it is, that, you know, that the plan that was formed here might form some kind of a basis for that, so that there's a bit more continuity. So might be sort of outside of the scope of this thing, but just being a different regional district, but just wanted to let you know.
No, that's really good. I think we've had others reach out to us before, and they, I think it's a matter of just staff providing them with some information. So staff talk to staff that are working on that. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to, I don't know how that works in the regional world. In the not-for-profit world, we just share everything. So it'd be, like you said, it'd be good to have that opportunity. Vivian, did you want to say something?
Just that Steve Rice and I have talked about this on a couple of occasions, and it was one of the things we really hit it on like a few years ago, sitting side by side at an Interior Health meeting, I do believe. And I put him on to laughs at that time and the website, and encouraged him to look at our plan. And to say that Steve's been a little bit busy would be like an understatement, you know. He was evacuated, the roads have been washed away, and he's been running around trying to represent some devastated constituents, and he's doing an amazing job. And he is back on his farm, and a couple of chickens and I think one cat survived, and he's rebuilding, and he's still working hard as the Area I Director. So, but it's a good reminder, and Emily, just to sort of put that in your back pocket too, is somebody that we might want to reach out to as our neighbor in the future, in our successful future. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Claire. Did you want to make a comment about that?
I don't think I have anything to add. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Stefan. That's really great to know that neighboring places are thinking of this, and really agriculture and things that affect agriculture don't really know boundaries, and we are very connected to the Lytton area and Spence's Bridge, just for things like supplies and routes in and out, and these are important issues that can be brought up. So I think that's however way we can facilitate, giving information as they produce their plan, and even just some of the logistics of how we did it. It's great to share. So I just wanted to say that Ralph in the chat box said he's sorry he had to leave. He thanks everyone. Congratulations on the receiving the support of the AAC bylaw. It's been 8 years since we started the discussion, so that's pretty neat. Mandy said she was sorry. She's been having internet trouble and haven't been able to connect to the meeting until just now. She can hear us, but we can't hear her. So I've missed most of it, but she'll catch up on everything. So thanks, Mandy, for that. Mandy Rogers is owner operator of Rex Peak Ranch near Carroll Lake, so 76 kilometers west of Lillooet. And she is also the Lillooet Livestock Association president, and Lillooet Agriculture and Food counts on the board, as well as the board of the Lillooet Invasive Species Society. And I probably missed some things, because this is what happens in small towns where we have like 8 hats on. All right, well, at this point, I think, unless there's any other updates, I actually would like to put out a suggestion for another meeting, that if we do have any updates, that perhaps that we could create like an update, like a little update page, or even just an extra 10 minutes for updates, that we do a little roundtable, because I do like the idea of understanding from each of the members' perspectives, something that's relevant to them that could be shared. So whether that's something in the world of honey or the world of wine or the world of garlic production, something that could be useful for all of us to understand and know going forward, whether that's a challenge or a success that could help others, that we could also have time to do that. But I'm on time. I thought that I would be running out of time, so I feel pretty good. All right. Any final things before we sign off? And if not, I'd have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 11:27. Does anyone want to second that? Great, Bev. Thank you so much. Any objections? Thanks so much for everybody for attending today, and look forward to the report coming from the District of Lillooet's attendance and the service bylaw, et cetera, et cetera. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Jackie.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.